Hey everyone, and welcome back to the weekly discussion video. Today we are talking about the new cards in the deck lists. Basically, you're taking a look at Affinity, Mono Blue Fairies, and other decks and how they are implementing the new addition. For example, Experimental Synthetizer and the 1-mana Ninja. For example, Experimental Synthetizer is now seeing play in Affinity, Boros, Metalcraft, and also in Storm. Experimental Synthetizer is probably one of the most powerful cards in Kamigawa Neon Dinasty, not only for Pauper, because it started seeing play also in other formats, for example Pioneer, Legacy, even Modern or Vintage, and it's just a lot of card advantage, this card. Affinity is not one of the best decks you can actually play it, but it's kind of cool because it's an artifact and you are playing a lot of free spells in forms of Frogmite and Mirror Enforcer. So basically, Experimental Synthetizer and Reckoner's Bargain are now making Rakdos Affinity a thing. The good part about Rakdos, instead of going Grixis, is that now your mana base is much better, because blue was just a splash for 2 cast and Gearseeker Serpent. Now you cut your third color, which was great only in the mirror match to kill Eathog with Blue Elemental Blast, and obviously Gearseeker Serpent is one of the best creatures in the mirror match, but also for Hydroblast against Burn. Right now, Reckoner's Bargain is just too much good against Burn, because you both draw 2 cards and gain some life. Reckoner's Bargain seems kind of broken because your free spells actually have a really high converted mana cost. In this case, your Frogger costs 7 mana and Frogmite costs 4 mana. You can also play Gurmagangler because you are playing a lot of cards that are going to the graveyard. For example, Echo Spring or your draw spells. Even Blood Fountain put at least 1 card in your graveyard because it generates a blood token. Often you are discarding just a land to draw a card, just to try to find something, or you can crack your Blood Fountain to bring back 2 creatures. So basically, Gurmagangler is something like a 1-mana creature, and it's not really bad Gurmagangler with Experimental Synthetizer because you're playing only 3 copies of Experimental Synthetizer. At least I suggest you to not play the full set in Affinity. 3 seems more than enough. Probably the best thing is to play only 2 copies of Experimental Synthetizer because you probably want the second copy of Gurmagangler. Size is good in this deck. But I wanted to try Experimental Synthetizer in Affinity. Science is something like Echo Wildspring, but even better, because you can also create a 2/2 White Samurai creature token. So in late game is just too much good, compared at least to Echo Wildspring. I said that these cards so play in other decks. Well, Seniraken and other Storm players are trying it in Storm. Basically, their Storm decklist are something like Storm with Echo Wildspring and Deadly Dispute, so they're cutting Echo Wildspring to play Experimental Synthetizer instead of Echo Wildspring. I'm not a truly big fan of Experimental Synthetizer and Deadly Dispute in Storm, but the card is good. And they were already playing cards like the 2-mana exile 2 cards, so you can play them until your next turn. Don't remember the exact name. But anyway, experimental synthetizer is something similar in certain ways. It costs only 1 mana less, and it drops an artifact on the battlefield, and you can sacrifice that artifact to Untitled Dispute, so you're basically just tapping 1 mana, generate 1 Lotus Petal, 1 treasure token, and draw an extra card. So is Eco Wellspring with extra benefits in this scenario, at least. It's cool to keep in mind that we can play this kind of storm deck, from my opinion, at least. Then I want to talk about Mono Blue Fairies. We are talking about first the Raptors 56 decklist, which got a trophy in MTGO leagues. It's just a straight Mono Blue Fairies that cut 4 copies of Delver Secret to add 4 copies of Moon Circuit Acre. Basically, you have more card advantage, and it's kind of really fearsome to face a Fairies deck right now, because you need to kill their creatures as fast as possible when they play them. But in late game, you usually have already spent all your removals, but they still have cards in hand or creatures on the battlefield, so it's really difficult when you are playing a removal based deck to interact with them, because any ninja they are playing, any Spellscatter Sprite is just a 2-for-1, and you are wasting resources trying to deal with their creatures, and if you are not able to stop their card advantage, they're getting extra card advantage, so it's really difficult. It's just difficult. Another list from Oliver Jukes this time, still Fairies, Mono Blue Fairies, is still playing Moon Circuit Acre, but instead of Ponder, they're playing Off One Mind. For example, in the previous list, there's no Off One Mind and there's no Spare Golem. And I think it's kind of weird to cut Ponder to play Off One Mind, but in certain scenarios, Off One Mind is still a 1 mana draw card. So you can probably say that the Off One Mind is the same thing as Ponder in Mono Blue Fairies. Obviously, other Fairies deck are playing Moon Circuit Acre, but I haven't seen yet Izzet Fairies or Dimir Fairies getting a trophy with Moon Circuit Acre. After all, it's not even a week since the Kamigawa Neon Dinasty has been dropped on Magic Online, just 2 days, so it's not weird to haven't seen yet all the potential broken cards or decks. I think then we can also talk about a weird creature, which is Network Disruptor, still from Oliver Chuck's deck list. This list got only a 4-1, and it's a sort of alternative way to play Izzet Fairies, because they're playing a lot of artifacts just to play Galvanic Blast. Disruptor seems kind of good because it's another flying creature, and is a non-human creature, so you can draw cards with Off One Mind, and sometimes tapping your opponent creatures to deal more damage with Ninja is good. I think that Network Disruptor is not really great, but people are trying it because it seems kind of cool. For example, from Simplify's list, we are seeing a Mono Blue first deck without so many counter spells, because he wanted to play Sunken City. And Sunken City is kind of great with a lot of 1 mana creatures, because it's a sort of pledge effect. Obviously, you need to pay the upkeep cost, but Sunken City is both a fun card and also a powerful card in certain scenarios. Here, Simplifies was also playing Moon Circuit Acre because the card is just too much good, especially in a mono blue first pile. He was also playing Of One Mind, but he wasn't playing Preordain or Ponder, which seems kind of suspect. I think that Preordain and Ponder are already great in Fairies, but if your main game plane is just beat down, probably you don't really need to dig your deck to try to find answers. But I'm not sure, I'm not a mono blue first player, so maybe it's just a weird approach. Another deck that is fine, it's reasonable to talk about is Tron, because Network Terminal seems decent as an alternative to Bonder's Ornament since it got banned. I don't really like Eco Wellspring here, but if you want to play Deadly Dispute, I think that Eco Wellspring is good. I mean, it's not really bad to cast Mystical Teaching to fetch an Ancestral Recall. Also, you can tap your Eco Wellspring, your Golden Egg, or your Treasure Token with Necro Terminal to draw this card. This card, this deck is from Elise From Me, and Elise From Me was able to got a trophy on Magic Online with this list. I don't really like, for example, having only one copy of Finger Marauder. It seems kind of weird to be able to got a trophy in a metagame which is supposed to be filled with blue fairies, especially with a new ninja. So if you want to play Tron in leagues, I think you need to have a solid matchup, solid answers against fairies, and usually the best way to interact with fairies is to have enough answers, enough removal, enough revels, and enough card advantage. So it's a lot. It's a lot of things that, but you can somewhat interact with fairies if you have enough of them. We are finally talking about Boros. This list is from Lega Pauper Toscana, which is a group, Pauper league from here in Italy, specifically from Tuscany. They also stream on Twitch. They were playing a list with a more beat down approach compared to the classic Boros Metalcraft with Monarch or Boros Monarch, and they were also playing with only 18 lands. I don't think it's reasonable to play without 20 or more lands, because especially if you play Experimental Synthetizer, you want to eat all your land drops, because if you have enough lands, you're also able to draw more cards with Experimental Synthetizer. It's cool to have more burn spells, but I think that I don't like Modern Epicure and Skewer of the Critics. I tried a similar list and I also got good results. I played only 2 leagues, but in the first one I got a 4-1. In the second one I recorded it and I'm gonna upload it next week on YouTube. And in the second league I got a perfect score, 5-0. So I trophied easily. I faced good matchups because Burn and Mono Black Devotion are good matchups, but the deck is solid. I think it will be really good in the next month. Experimental Synthetizer is just too much value with Glintok and Korsky Fisher, because your Glintok with Experimental Synthetizer becomes a 1-mana Wood Drifter, and 1-mana Wood Drifter seems kind of crazy. Okay, we already talked about Storm. Now it's time to talk about blue-white ephemerate, because for example Exulman is trying a blue-white ephemerate with Mirror Shell Crab and Spirited Companion. Spirited Companion is the 2-mana dog, similar to an Elvish Visionary, same body, same effect. It draws a card when it enters the battlefield. It's not really surprising as card, but I think it's correct to play a Spirited Companion here, because your turn 2 now becomes Spirited Companion, and your turn 3 you want to leave your mana open to cast Mirror Shell Crab. So basically this version of blue-white ephemerate a lot of times want to play the channel ability of Mirror Shell Crab and then reanimate it with Late to Dinner on turn 4 or turn 5. And Mirror Shell Crab in early game is just good. It's just a 5/7 creature, which is a lot of, is really big for only 4 mana, and it's probably one of the bigger creature in the format. Also the 3 mana ward effect, that ward is an ability, static ability, that counter a spell or an ability that target this creature when you target it. If I remember correctly, it counter only your opponent's ability, so it's also better. But doesn't seem really great in a 7 mana drop, but if you play it only for 4 mana in early game, it's great to block Mirror Enforcer, Gearseeker Serpent, Gurmag Angler, or anything else. The cool part here also is that Mirror Shell Crab, especially if you play it on turn 4, is something like a Gurmag Angler, so you're at a control deck, but you can start to attack your opponent, and 5 in power creature is something like only 4 turns to kill your opponent, which is really great, from my opinion at least. Another use of Mirror Shell Crab is probably in Cycling Storm. For example, Brent Cook tried it in Cycling Storm in its sideboard. Is a great card to counter Relic of Progenitus. I mean, not only for counter Relic when they play it, but also to counter the activated ability of Relic of Progenitus. So if you have enough mana, you can cycle Moonshell Crab and counter the cracked activated ability of Relic of Progenitus, which is great because you can now play around the Relic of Progenitus, or at least you can try to play around it. Another cool thing about the new Crab is that you can't counter the channel ability with Pyroblast or Dispel, because it is an ability, not a spell. We already talked about this Blue-Red Fairies deck, and then finally the last deck we are talking today, Pilipala. Pilipala, which is a cool card. In Italian we call it Sfarfallante, because which means something like a flying creature. And Pilipala works really well with Careful Cultivation. Careful Cultivation, I didn't really notice it in the last week, but can generate infinite mana with Pilipala. The enchanted creature gets +1/+3 reach and tap at 2 green mana. So you are enchanting your Pilipala, tapping Pilipala to generate 2 green mana, and then use those green mana to untap Pilipala and generate 1 colored mana of any color. So basically on turn 3 you can generate an infinite amount of mana of any color. So basically is a free spells combo. Pilipala, the enchantment, careful cultivation, and a payoff. In this case, can be any kind of rolling thunder effect, stream of doubt, or anything else. I think can be a really good combo deck. Probably is not really great in the current metagame because those kind of combo decks are weak to fairies, especially because it's a weak creature. It's just a 1/1 mana, is 1/1 2 mana creature. It dies to literally everything. It also dies to gas shot, and also they can counter it with Annual. And anyway, I haven't seen yet a good list with Pilipala for the simple reason that this set is on Magical Line since since yesterday, I think, or Friday, and we haven't seen yet a good Pilipala list, or at least getting a Pilipala list or a result. This list is from Mario Pauper Hive, and okay, Pilipala with careful cultivation is cool, is great, but I don't really like this list for the simple reason that, from my opinion, Pilipala combo should play some shell similar to Childless Tribe. Childless Tribe is a blue-based combo deck with a white splash, and it plays Childless Tribe, which is a 1 mana creature that costs only one white mana, and that combo basically is a free spells combo deck because you need a inside out. Obviously, you need a lot of cards in hand to deal 20 damage because you need to discard your card, and every card you discard is something like 4 damages, and you also need a way to deal damage to your opponent. So basically, you need a Shadow Rift or anything, or any other spells that give you your creature the ability to attack straight to your opponent, so basically the ability to pass over your opponent's blockers. So for that reason, I think that at least with only your combo, card advantage and deck manipulations, and eventually counter spells that can be in form of Dispel, counter spell pairs, etc. And can also be in form of Moment's Peace and Weather Storm against aggressive strategies. For example, Childless Tribe was playing Prismatic Strands, which was good against any kind of beatdown deck, and also against Burn. And obviously, Childless Tribe was good because you had Circular Logic and Dispel, so basically 8 1 mana counter spells, but was also good thanks to Gash. Gash was a kind of crazy card. It's really sad to not have any more Gash in the format, but whatever. You can leave Gash in the same format as Foil. I think we can try something better with Pilipala. I think the better shell probably will be the Childless Tribe one, but I'm still not sure because I don't really know what is the best win condition for this deck. Probably Pyromatics, but you can counter Pyromatics with Prismatic Strands. Anyway, when you generate infinite mana, you don't really care about the color of your win condition, so it's kind of easy to find the best win condition when you have infinite mana of any color. Probably you just want a card that you are able eventually to use for any other purpose, because in Tribe, for example, you were able to cycle Inside Out and Shadow Rift whenever you had the opportunity and you need to draw an extra card, because both of those instant spells, they were also able to draw a card. So for that reason, I think Tribe with Gash at last is still better compared to Pilipala, but Pilipala is just too good. It's a scarecrow with a it's a cool scarecrow. So anyway, if you have any suggestion on cards that you think you can we can see in Pauper from Neo Kamigawa set. If you think I missed something, just tell me on the comments of this video. I'll see you next week with the deck tech and video gameplay of this Boros list, so see you later.